there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, no immediate action from Iran or the US has spurred investors to cautiously return to equity markets today. We saw MSCI's index for developing world stocks rise about 0.4% on the day. That's after falling for 2 straight days. Investors, of course, are now looking forward to the signing of a Phase 1 trade deal between the US and China this month. South Africa's JSE tracking other emerging markets today, firming up slightly. But of course, as the rush to safe havens like gold waned today, we saw resources falling. Gold miners down about 3% on the day, while the platinum index fell over 1%. Now, also coming up on the show, Iran's Revolutionary Guards pledge revenge following the US assassination of a top military commander. Addis Ababa hosts the last of 4 meetings over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And we look at the treasure trove hidden in snails. Now, the commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards has now pledged revenge following the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani. General Hosseini Salami was speaking to mourners at the funeral service for the deceased in Kerman. Thousands were gathered to bid farewell to the previous commander of the Quds Force. Nonetheless, the burial was postponed after dozens of people were killed in a stampede as crowds of mourners packed the streets. Now, the death of General Qasem Soleimani has united Iranians who consider the former commander a national hero. In addition, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei earlier said retaliation would match the scale of Soleimani's killing, but it will be at a time and a place of Tehran's choosing.
I say the last word first. We will take revenge. We will take revenge that will be hard, decisive, and we will make them regret what they did. Have faith and stay calm. It will be decisive and final. I say to our enemies that we will take revenge, but if they take another step in response, we will set fire to the places that they love, and they know where these places are.
And still in Iran, lawmakers have voted to allocate an additional $22.8 million to the Revolutionary Guards Quds forces. Members of the Council of Guardians participated in a parliamentary session to endorse the law, which also formally labels the U.S. Army and the Pentagon as terrorist entities. Now, the late general was responsible for building up Tehran's network of proxy forces across the Middle East. He was killed along with Iraqi militia leader Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis in a U.S. drone attack on their convoy near Baghdad airport. U.S. and Iranian warnings of new strikes and retaliation have stoked concerns about a broader Middle East conflict. It has also led to calls in the U.S. Congress for legislation to stop U.S. President Donald Trump from going to war with Iran. Now, of course, all these developments in the Middle East are having an impact on global trading and commodity prices. Earlier, we spoke to CGTN's Jacob Greaves in Dubai. Take a look.
Well, after the attacks itself, and as Trump and Iranian leaders have traded threats or had been rising, Brent crude reaching as high as $70.74 a barrel amid fears the rising tensions in the region could impact oil supply. Now, that's actually slipped somewhat today, dipping close to 0.7% so far, with some analysts speculating Iran could be unlikely to strike against the US in a way that would disrupt oil supplies, because that in turn could dent Tehran's own crude exports. Gold has seen hefty gains as investors seek safe havens in recent days, reaching a near 7-year peak overnight Monday. But like oil, it's retreated somewhat in trading today. Gold stocks are showing a slight rebound. Saudi Arabia's market up around 0.5% early on. In general, though, we're still looking at a very fluid situation.
Well, heading back to the continent now, Egypt's national carrier, Egypt Air, has announced plans to suspend its flights to the Iraqi capital of Baghdad. The suspension is expected to run for 3 days, starting from Wednesday. Now, this is because of the unstable security situation in the country, due, of course, to the tensions between the U.S. and Iraq. The state-owned carrier confirmed the interruption was taken for the safety of passengers and planes, and until the security situation does stabilize. Now, developments in the Middle East and by and large U.S. President Donald Trump's unpredictability, has business players across the world guessing what the next move will be and, of course, what impact this will have. Here in Kenya, James Hughes, a market analyst with the Scope Markets Global Office, hosts an event next week which was dubbed Trading Strategies for Donald Trump's New World. Well, he's with me now in the studio to talk about how exactly has Trump's trade strategy changed the global trading system? And of course, how does that impact the outlook for 2020? Let's take this apart. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio, James. Now, it's quite an interesting way to put it, Trump's new world. It pretty much is his world now. But let's look at what has been going on. Last year's trade war, that exacted a heavy cost, of course, on the global economy. Investment slowed down, took a hit to the manufacturing sector as well. How much damage has it had on the global trading system, and will this truce with China repair it?
It depends if this is actually a truce or whether this is a phase one deal as almost like a PR story to the markets to say, look, we are making some sort of progress. Of course, we've heard so many times from Donald Trump and from China that we're close to a deal, we're close to a deal. And of course, we can all notice that nothing has yet been signed or agreed upon. So there's a lot going on here, and you're right, this US-China trade war has dominated financial markets, just like Donald Trump has dominated the world since he's come into power, for good or for bad. But the whole situation has had a massive effect on markets, has had a massive effect on the global economy. All you need to look at is earnings from global companies, right? Not just the S&P, but you look around the world, how many companies have blamed slowdowns in China, slowdowns in the US for poor data. So it's a massive issue. It's a massive issue, and it has been for a long time. And it just, hopefully we get some sort of deal, but it's just phase one. We've still got a long way to go with it.
Still got a long way to go. Well, a huge concern rather is the World Trade Organization. Its appellate body is now basically paralyzed, and that's after the U.S., of course, refused to bring in new judges. Give us a sense of how serious this is and what happens to the global trading system, the multilateral trading system, now that organization is sort of paralyzed.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the World Trade Organization, it's hard because from an outsider looking in, you can almost sit there and say, well, what is the purpose of the World Trade Organization? How does it really help globally? And it's really there to help within trade disputes. It's there to be the go-between when countries have issues with trade. Now, with the US and China, the two largest powers in the world, it's been completely redundant. And that's not just because of what Donald Trump's done recently. That's for the last 3 years. The World Trade Organization has had hardly any say in that whatsoever. Yes, within smaller economies, we have seen movement there, but the unilateral approach from Donald Trump has really made the WTO particularly redundant at the moment. And it's bad news going forward because, yes, the WTO isn't necessarily there for superpowers like the US and China. It's for other economies who struggle within trade. I'm from the UK. We are about to enter in trade discussions because of the Brexit situation with many countries in which the World Trade Organization could be incredibly helpful, but right now, not at all.
So pretty much that's a serious situation right now, what's going on with the WTO. Now also, people are talking about the rise of parallel markets, China and Russia forging closer ties going forward. We've also seen North Korea and, of course, Iran or Iraq sort of withstanding those sanctions from the US. So what does this mean? Is it true that we're entering a new phase of parallel markets? And how do investors navigate this changing landscape?
It's interesting because a really similar situation to you would get with if you had one big company who monopolized an industry. What happens within there? You see smaller players go together to create bigger brands. And almost as what we're seeing from a global economy point of view. the US and Donald Trump has this approach. Now, whether this approach is right, whether this approach is wrong, he will, as he say, put America first, but that's to the detriment of everyone else. And there seems to be this feeling that Donald Trump thinks, well, maybe the world will just accept that this is how I'm going to do things. He's most likely to get another 4 years worth of, in power. So we can see this situation where countries align together to tackle the sort of tariffs and issues that we get that come from this sort of movement out of the White House. And it's completely and utterly dominated how we look at markets and how we look at the global economy over the last few years.
How are you advising people to navigate markets?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's on one side of things, investment has become difficult but it's only become difficult because the places that we've been before and money has been before, the safe places, it just isn't necessarily as safe anymore. So it's a case of looking into emerging markets. Emerging markets are enormous, we know that. From a currency point of view, we see currency fluctuations in a number of these countries. But if you look what US and China trade war means and these trade discussions mean, it means we have other enormous economies like the likes of India, which India is massive business in India. And that it becomes areas where we will see much more investment. And it's the sort of areas that we see companies in India. It's where we see, not necessarily advise people to go, but say, these are the areas you should be looking into, because for now, it's very difficult in the, if you like, old-fashioned way we used to trade.
And very quickly, what's your outlook? Cautiously optimistic? When we talk about the global trading system, very quickly.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic. I would say it's a difficult one, though.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Would have loved to continue that discussion, but we have to leave it there. Of course, that's Mr. James Hughes. He's a market analyst with Scope Markets Global Office, joining us in the studio today. Well, let's move on now. Take a look at our corporate headlines for the day. Now, creditors of Kenya's Nakumatt supermarket chain have voted to liquidate the business over its inability to pay its debts. The business was forced to shut more than a dozen outlets in 2017 as it struggled to pay its suppliers, its landlords and other creditors. Once Kenya's biggest retailer, Nakumatt was placed under voluntary administration following a protection grant from creditors by a court. And Russian state lender VTB has filed a lawsuit against a Mozambican state-owned firm in Britain's High Court in a $2 billion debt scandal. Now, the filing names defendants as the Mozambique State and the Mozambique Asset Management Corporation. These firms allegedly took about $535 million. That's a loan from VTB as part of a costly project that U.S. authorities say was an elaborate front for a bribery and kickback scheme. Meanwhile, banking group ABSA has reached a $497 million agreement with the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. Now, the deal is expected to bolster protection against political risk and expand financing across 7 countries through guarantees which are valid for as long as 15 years. And lastly, U.S. airplane manufacturer Boeing plans to reassign about 3,000 of its employees. That's following the temporary production halt of the 737 MAX fleet. The move will affect employees mainly based at Boeing's Renton plant near Seattle. The grounding of 737 MAX came in after 2 of its models crashed in 2 fatal crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia, with a total of 346 killed. And that's a quick look at our corporate headlines today. Well, let's head into a quick break now, but still to come on the show. Addis Ababa hosts the last of 4 meetings over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And no reprieve yet for power blackouts in South Africa.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Uche Okoronkwo. Hello, Nairobi.
This
Well, of course.
is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, Ethiopia is holding the last of 4 technical meetings on negotiations regarding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. A technical delegation from Egypt, headed by the Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation, arrived in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa to attend that meeting. Representatives from the United States of America and the World Bank will also be in attendance. Of course, Egypt is holding to its demands regarding the regulations for the filling and operating of the GERD. They're dismissing news reports that the North African nation had agreed to the release of 35 billion cubic meters of water. Egypt fears that the speed of filling the Ethiopian dam will diminish its share of the River Nile water. Now, across Ethiopia, farmers and businessmen are eagerly awaiting for the completion of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The dam is projected to produce more than 6,000 megawatts of electricity. Here's CGTN's Terry Wangari with more.
Cell phone batteries constantly dying, health centers bereft of modern equipment, a dependence on flashlights after sundown. All these may be a thing of the past once the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is complete. The dam, which will receive water from the Blue Nile, is set to become the largest hydropower plant in Africa.
Making sure that your machines are functioning smoothly. When you have electrical, voltage fluctuations or power cuts, power ons, or when you're switching over from your main lines to your diesel generator, there is a few seconds of major voltage fluctuations on the machines which spoil electrical spare parts, etc., and those need to be replaced. So there's a cost involved in that.
Ethiopian negotiators, however, remain locked in talks over how the dam will affect downstream neighbors, principally Egypt. The next round of negotiations start on Thursday in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. The negotiations are likely to renew focus on Cairo's fears that the dam could bring water and food insecurity for millions of Egyptians. Despite this, Ethiopians at the dam site say they are doing their best to focus on the task at hand. They believe that the dam will open up the country to industrial development.
Doing business is justified with this cost, and these costs are incorporated in our structure of costs. So that's one thing that we are prepared with, but I think we would be a lot more competitive, even keeping in mind that the African Free Trade Agreement is going to be in place soon. The GERD will really help Ethiopian industries become more competitive.
Ethiopia is striving for universal electricity access by 2025, though currently more than half the population of 110 million lives without it. Even in Addis Ababa, power is patchy, and the city suffered weeks of blackouts during the most recent period of electricity rationing in May and June 2019. But once the GERD is complete, Ethiopia will be well on its way to achieving its 2025 target. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Now, 2020 didn't start off on the positive note that many at Eskom had been hoping for. This is after President Cyril Ramaphosa promised no load shedding until 13th January. Now, the power utility blamed a faulty coal conveyor belt system at the incomplete Medupi power station for the most recent blackout in the country. Here's Angelo Coppola with more.
The state utility has a new CEO. He has his work cut out for him. He has a lot to deal with, from a bloated work complement to an aging fleet unable to consistently meet demands of its industrial users and regional customers.
The job of a leader is not to be a manager. He has good managers, or needs to surround himself by good managers, and his job is to give them direction, inspire them, and focus on strategic issues and structural issues that prepare Eskom to be a utility of the future.
While the new CEO finds his feet, the impact of load shedding has been widespread and has cost the country dearly.
And if we have any long-term load shedding in South Africa, for each month it's going to be wiping at least 2% of our GDP. And that means that we have to really look at how we can get out of this mess in every way.
Many analysts have bemoaned the fact that politicians get involved in the operations of the utility. Some suggest that it is to be expected.
When the organization's performance is failing, it's like an open invitation for politicians to want to get involved in the engine room, because they are under enormous pressure politically from their constituents, from their members, their parties, to find out what is going on. So really it's up to Eskom to get that engine performing properly if it wants to keep the politicians out of the engine room.
The shareholder has been trying to find solutions. In December, the Minerals Minister made an urgent call for suppliers of renewable energy to submit short-term solutions.
We'll probably have to go and look at if we can't get, for example, barges or power ships into our harbours to help us out in the meantime. But it is certainly the biggest risk for South African business, for South African government, and for the South African economy as a whole.
While the utility struggles to find short-term and longer-term solutions, it's emerged that the Eskom board has requested over $70 million from its regulator to pay staff an additional so-called 13th or bonus check, something that is sure to irk consumers as they suffer under load shedding. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's head to Nigeria now, where the cost of electricity across the country has been increased. However, Nigerians are not expected to bear the brunt of this increment until April 2020. That's when the West African nation gradually begins to reduce its subsidies on electricity consumption. With more on this, here's CGTN's Phil Ihaza.
According to the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, with effect from January 2020, the price for electricity consumption will rise by up to 78% across the country. However, the federal government's Power Sector Recovery Program, which currently provides subsidy for end users, will ensure this cost is not immediately transferred to Nigerians. Consumers will begin to pay gradually from April and fully by the end of 2021, when the window for the current government subsidy will fully elapse. NERC says the move is as a result of changes in the rate of inflation, increase in gas prices for power plants, among other factors. Experts say this hike is needed to sustain the running costs of power firms, and there's a need for more investment in order to boost their capacity to supply electricity across the country.
The increase in tariff is because there's an increase in administrative expenses. We can see that the cost of fuel in this power plant has increased. So they will all pass it back to the end consumer. They can use profits generated to increase the capacity to distribute or bring in more investment to increase the capacity to distribute.
Africa's most populous country is home to nearly 200 million people and requires at least 180,000 megawatts of electricity, but currently can only distribute around 4,000 megawatts out of 12,000 megawatts it produces. Economic analysts say by April, the burden of this new price of electricity could inflict more hardship on the citizens and may lead to inflation.
So if you remove these subsidies that is about to be removed, that means that the cost of doing business would go up. It would literally mean the cost of product in the market would go up. It means that there will be less, the disposable income in the hand of the consumer will reduce because of cost of production. And if cost of production goes up, that means the end product will also go up, which will negatively affect the economy. In short, I hope we will not see inflation.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has reiterated his commitment to reforming the power sector and ensuring better livelihood for citizens across the country by 2023 before the end of his second and final tenure. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Now in Egypt, the chairman of the tax authority, Abdel Azim Hussein, has been arrested over charges of corruption. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more on that story.
The chairman of the tax authority has been caught red-handed. He was receiving bribes from 2 accountants. Ironically, Abdelazim Hussein was hired a year earlier with the mandate of fighting corruption and tax evasion. He is the latest in a string of high-profile arrests in the last couple of years. It includes 2 ministers, a CEO of a state-owned holding company, and a chairman of the Customs Authority. This is the culmination of the anti-corruption strategy launched in 2017 by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi.
The strategy includes 9 focal points, which include the strengthening of penalties and fines for different corruption cases. It also entails reducing the red tape because this opens the door for bribery. Introducing an electronic system avoids interaction with employees to reduce the possibilities of corruption, while at the same time eradicating bureaucracy. Providing training for state employees and tougher penalties for bribery are also the main aspects of the strategy.
Corruption has had its dire effects on the economy in Egypt and has been holding back development efforts.
Experts in Egypt have calculated the cost of corruption to stand at about 600 billion on the exonome. A big portion of this is tax evasion because of the informal market. Not dealing with corruption has kept foreign investors out of the market, and that is why it's essential to block all forms of corruption.
The strategy aims at eradicating corruption by the end of the year 2022. Abdelazim Hussein is currently in custody pending trial. But the government says he's not going to be the last high-profile personality behind bars for corruption. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And over to Somalia now, where the first and the biggest travel and tourism fair has wrapped up in Mogadishu. The 2-day event was started in attempt to attract tourists into the untapped Horn of Africa state. The country also hopes to showcase the positive side of its capital, once referred to as the Rome of Africa due to its influx of visitors. Now, the Ministries of Education and Tourism say that much needs to be done to do away with negative media publicity before promotion of tourism arrivals.
Somalia has an explored tourism sector with beautiful sceneries and one of the longest coastlines in the continent. In 2021, we are working towards improving conditions for the significant sector to attract tourists, but we need to do away with the negative perception in the media.
There are no colleges to study aviation, tours, or travel courses in the country. We urge relevant government agencies and universities to establish and encourage young people to undertake these courses.
You are watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now. Still coming up on the show. One of the world's biggest tech shows, the Consumer Electronics Show, kicks off in Las Vegas. And the first deliveries of made-in-China Tesla Model 3 sedans begin.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
And just about 1:30, let's recap today's top headlines. A stampede at Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani's funeral has left over 40 people dead and 190 injured. This after the procession arrived in his hometown of Kerman. The burial has now been postponed, and Soleimani was killed in a U.S. airstrike in Iraq last week. Earlier on Tuesday, Iran's parliament made the decision to designate all American forces as terrorists. And Libyan forces loyal to the eastern-based commander Khalifa Haftar say they've taken over the coastal city of Sirte in what would be a key strategic gain. Several hours of airstrikes preceded the hit. The city lies to the west of Libya's Oil Crescent, which is a strip of coastline along which key oil export terminals are located. And Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has embarked on his tour of Africa. It's in line with a long-running tradition for Chinese envoys to make Africa their first overseas destination each year. The Chinese FM starts his visit in Egypt. Regional and international issues will be discussed, including Libya's conflict, as well as upholding a consensus towards cooperation for the Belt and Road Initiative. And lastly, Tuesday has been a Christmas Day in Ethiopia. Ethiopia marks the day on 7th of January, and like most parts of the world, where the ceremony is recognized on 25th of December. Now, the country, which is largely Orthodox Christian, follows the Coptic calendar. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. Now, former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn has reportedly escaped Japan through the Kansai airport in Osaka. Ghosn is believed to have hidden inside a musical equipment box as he was brought aboard a private jet and flown first to Turkey and then to Lebanon. Ghosn managed to skip bail and leave the country despite heavy surveillance while he was staying at a home in Tokyo. Now, Japan has since said it will tighten border control precautions to prevent a recurrence of this, but it did not confirm the details of his escape. Nissan also says it will still pursue legal action against Ghosn despite his escape. And Japan and Lebanon do not have an extradition treaty, and experts have said it will be difficult to bring Ghosn back to stand trial in Tokyo. And in the world of technology, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas is where the new decade kicks off. The gigantic trade show brings together some of the biggest names in the consumer electronics industry. Here's CGTN's Mark New with a look at some of the interesting innovations which were unveiled so far at this year's CES.
CES is lifting the curtain on technology, aiming to not only shake up the market, but also change lives.
You basically step on one side or another.
This technology uses sensors and gaming to help stroke patients rehabilitate and improve their balance.
So once anyone has a stroke, it's basically use it or lose it. So in order to maintain the balancing capability, they have to keep working on repetitive motion. So by using this, they can know how exactly their body moves and how their posture works, and then you can keep track of all the progress.
Artificial intelligence is a big theme at CES, and you're finding it incorporated into so many different devices. But did you ever think it would be incorporated in a mirror?
Keep close in 10 seconds.
Lumini's camera captures my features, and its AI algorithms begin calculating.
The moisture is really good, but point is 10 points, so really good. Let's see the elasticity. Elasticity is still good compared to Eurasia as well. But pigment, you can see the little guy. You need an improvement on that one.
It recommends skincare treatment, including use of this mask, which provides my skin with light therapy.
This is healing my skin?
Major tech giants like LG are using CES to unveil a razor-thin TV that looks like art. But the company also painted a vision of artificial intelligence where someday its devices will not only make recommendations, but go beyond its own knowledge to learn about new things that will improve a customer's life.
Olivia, you still look a little tense. What about a quick call with IP for advice?
That's a good idea. Connect me.
CES is also serving as the product launching pad for companies with Chinese founders, including Royal, which is headquartered in both Silicon Valley and Shenzhen, China. It introduced the RoWrite 2, a writing pad which sends your notes straight to digital devices. It also joined forces with U.S. audio company Clear to develop this flexible AMOLED screen that wraps right around the Mirage smart speaker.
Clearly shows that how we can apply the flexible technologies to change the way we design different products and enhance the user experience in the traditional space.
Royal was the first to introduce a foldable smartphone, a category that's also been taken up by big tech companies like Samsung and Huawei. Despite the competition, Royal's founder says it's important for a company to find its competitive advantage in order to keep pushing and innovating. Mark New, CGTN, Las Vegas.
Meanwhile, South Korean car maker Hyundai and Uber Technologies have teamed up to develop electric air taxis. The automaker unveiled its electric flying car concept at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. This is aimed at providing solutions that fight urban congestion around the globe. Hyundai's aircraft is designed to fly on trips of up to 100 kilometers and has a cruising speed of up to 180 miles per hour. Now, as part of its aerial ride-sharing partnership, Hyundai will produce and deploy the flying cars. Uber, on the other hand, will provide airspace support services and customer interfaces. Now, Uber has pledged to begin demonstrator urban flights in 2020 and commercial operations in 2023 as part of its project.
I proudly present to you our first eVTOL concept vehicles, SA-1. Now we're looking at the dawn of a completely new era that opened the skies above our cities. By point-to-point air travel, we can reduce travel time drastically by averting ground traffic congestion.
Now, the first deliveries of Tesla's made-in-China Model 3 sedans have begun. This, of course, marks 1 year after the automaker began construction on its massive Shanghai factory. The delivery is a milestone for the company as it tries to carve out a piece of the world's biggest auto market. CGTN reporter Yang Shengxi has more on that story.
Dancing on stage. It is not hard to see why Tesla founder Elon Musk is in a good mood this week. The flamboyant American entrepreneur has delivered the first batch of made-in-China Model 3 electric vehicles to Chinese customers. It's a dream that has come to fruition just a year since Tesla's $2 billion Gigafactory was launched in Shanghai. breaking the record for global automakers in China. He calls it the Shanghai Speed. You can own a made-in-China Model 3 for about $46.4 thousand US. That comes following a 9% price drop last Friday. Tesla's 2019 sales were bigger than the previous 2 years combined, which was mainly thanks to the popularity of the Model 3 sedan. Musk also announced plans to manufacture Tesla's latest Model Y cars in China.
But actually, probably even more people prefer an SUV than a sedan. And I think ultimately Model Y will have more demand than probably all of the other cars of Tesla combined.
Model 3 is expected to be completely domestically produced by the end of 2020. Currently, only 30% of the components are produced locally. Analysts expect production costs to further go down as Tesla builds a more complete supply chain in China. That could mean lower prices in the future. The Gigafactory builds more than 3,000 cars in a week and plans to double productions next year. The new energy vehicle market in China, the biggest in the world, is expected to become that much more competitive. Yang Chengxi, CGTN, Shanghai.
Now, Chinese lender XCMG is set to open its first wholly owned overseas bank in Brazil, following approval from the central bank. Banco XCMG SA is the first foreign participant bank to receive direct approval from the Central Bank of Brazil. It will support XCMG sales in the Brazilian market and offer financial products and services while aiding the development of the lender's distribution network. The bank will focus on providing consumer credit, leases, and other financing services.
We are honored, but we also know that we have a responsibility, that the Brazilian Central Bank wants to increase competition and reduce the cost of credit by allowing foreign investment companies to participate in the financial market. We are very proud that Banco XCMG SA is the first overseas bank established by the Chinese manufacturing company. Bidding for the overseas bank is very important for XCMG to execute its global strategy.
Now, e-racing fans watched an exciting grand finale of the Formula One esports series China Championship over the weekend in Shanghai. Organizers hope the event will boost China's growing esports industry. CGTN reporter Lin Nan brings us the story.
Speed and passion were on full throttle for players and fans of e-racing in China. College student Tang Tianyu was crowned the champion of the Formula One Esports Series China Championship Grand Final held in Shanghai.
It's a massive platform offering ordinary people an opportunity to join Formula One racing. The event is officially organised by F1, the pinnacle of e-racing. Racers demonstrate skills and abilities on the stage.
The China Championship is the first regional competition of the series. It was launched in August 2019, attracting over 5,000 players across the country.
I have been watching Formula One and playing Formula One games for over 10 years. The atmosphere of the venue and the professionalism of the drivers gives me a feeling of real Formula One racing. I think it's the closest moment in my life to Formula One.
Esports is big business and big bucks in China. China's esports industry is estimated to be worth more than 100 billion yuan, or about $14 billion. There's even a global push for esports to be considered an Olympic event.
We have been operating Formula One in China for many years, and our audience is getting more interested in and knowledgeable about the sport. They can become racers of professional teams through esports, and they can even join the teams in real life.
There are estimated 198 million esports fans worldwide. 75 million, or almost 40% of these fans, are in China. For the Chinese esports industry, 2019 has been a blast. The country has witnessed multiple and significant business developments during the year. Formula One says the China Championship was held to identify the next wave of Chinese talents and develop the passion for racing in China through esports.
in terms of bringing Formula One to a new audience within the Chinese market, and also for us to exist and have a presence in China beyond just the Grand Prix weekend. Yes, the esports property that we've expanded in this region has played a very important role as we look to reach out to a younger audience, a new audience, and engage them in a new and innovative way.
The finals national champion and runner-up will join its global championship and compete with their peers from all over the world this spring. Lin Nan, CGTN, Shanghai.
As we mentioned earlier in the show, the Consumer Electronics Show kicked off in Las Vegas today. Let's get the latest from the ground. Mark New joins us now in Las Vegas. Mark, great to have you on the show. Now, the world has certainly been looking forward to an exciting lineup of course, cutting-edge technology, which, of course, will define the future. We're hearing about Uber's flying car going forward. Give us a sense of what are some of the companies and tech making the most noise at CES this year.
Well, you mentioned the whole flying car concept. That's interesting because Toyota actually started off one of their events seeming like they were going to introduce a flying car. That did not happen, but instead they actually introduced a prototype city. And that particular city will have 175 acres of futuristic buildings. That's something where the expectations were of an automobile and they went in a completely different direction. Also, for example, other companies went the reverse way. For example, Sony, well known for their sound and video devices and movies and entertainment. Instead, the big thing that they brought up near the end of the show for just a short time was actually a concept EV car. Who would have expected that from Sony? Of course, it has all kinds of, I believe, at least 33 sensors involved in that, outside and inside. But it is a prototype, for example, and a lot of companies here put out devices that will never really get into the market, but at least they sort of set the trend on the path. So interesting things happening where different companies actually going into sectors that you didn't think were possible, but technology is all kind of linking them together. Uche.
Right, well, on that note, this year the health sector seems to be one of the louder themes at CES. What are the sectors taking the limelight this year?
That's right. If you want to measure something on your body or whatever, it's probably out there. It seems like you walk around, people are rowing, jumping, and doing all sorts of things to monitor yourselves. I mentioned earlier in my story, one of the interesting devices was actually for stroke patients, and that really serves a purpose because I tried it out, put on the band, and tested my balance, improving your balance and your gait. Extremely effective, and I actually found it hard because they could advance in levels. So an extremely important device from NeoEffect for improving your balance for stroke patients. Also many other devices in health. We saw skin and also breathing, a very popular thing, in how the pollution affects your skin. Did all kinds of detection devices. Another interesting aspect, improving hearing and audio. There's actually now certain apps that can distinguish and take out the background sound to help you, and that's actually AI driven to filter out that background sound using artificial intelligence. Another interesting device was the actual Loomies by Pampers, where you have a diaper that has a sensor and it actually monitors their sleep, but it also monitors when they're wet. So crossing to old generations, young generations, health tech, hitting all of those markets. Uche.
Well, certainly a lot of interesting tech going into 2020 there. I'm sure you'll keep us updated as the event progresses. Many thanks for that update, Mark. That's Mark New joining us there in Las Vegas. Well, let's shift focus now. Take a look at how commodities performed today. Now, with no new developments in the tense situation between the US and Iran, we saw gold prices retreating from near 7-year highs as investors took profits today. Spot gold steadied after falling earlier in today's session. Oil prices also pulling back from multi-month highs. Brent crude fell just over 1% on signs that Iran will be unlikely to strike against the US in a way that will disrupt supplies. Well, let's head into a quick break now, still coming up. A young entrepreneur in Tunisia finds a treasure trove in snails.
the greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
And let's head to Nigeria now, where a trained nutritionist, Oluwatoyin Onigbanjo, decided to get creative in her kitchen. Now, Oluwatoyin was inspired by her fussy toddler who would only eat meals which were served in an artistic and animated way. She now runs August Secrets, which is a company that creates unique recipes for children with the goal of helping to curb malnutrition in Africa.
Oluwatoyin Onigbanjo is shopping for vegetables at a market in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. She runs August Secrets, a company she started in 2016 that develops healthy meals for children using locally sourced ingredients.
I'm here to shop for vegetables and fruits to make amazing, healthy foods for the kids. You know, they're on holidays, so it gives me time to make this healthy food for them again.
She likes to incorporate food art in her creations to attract and hold the attention of children who are mainly fussy feeders.
Food should not just be eaten, food should also be good to look at, you know, let alone talking about children who love to play. So when my son, you know, Jaden wasn't eating well, you know, it was, you know, the first point for me to start, you know, making creative food, and that worked. So that was what inspired me to make food art, and I've been doing it.
Having studied public and international relations, Oluwatoyin exploits the power of social media platforms to publicize her company by posting tantalizing photos of her meals to inspire her followers.
Parenting has gone beyond just forcing children to do things. But when you're creative, when you take your time to really try to understand the reasons they do certain things, you'll be able to be a better parent. You know, so that's why, you know, for food, it's really important for me to, you know, make the food fun. And then if you don't eat it after that time, then I can discipline you. But when I make the food really creative, it's likely that, you know, the children would like it.
My mommy knows that I don't like vegetables, so she makes my food like this, and I love it.
My favorite recipes.
And based on such unbiased feedback, in 2017, she published her children's recipe book, August Secrets Simple Meal Plan, which showcases unique and fun meals for children aged between 6 months and 5 years. The book has sold over 5,000 copies.
I know it's really hard. A lot of moms tell me, no, I've done everything. But the truth is, it's not all the time. You need to try, or you don't need to use your experience for your first child to judge your second child. The most important thing children need to see, they don't need to see perfect parents. They only need to see a parent who is making an effort. The moment they see that you're making an effort, today, 2 days after, 3 days after, you'll be amazed at how they'll start taking their healthy food after some time. It's ready to be taken off.
Oluwatoyin also runs a kitchen where she produces packaged meals and cereals for children sold in Nigeria, Ghana, the UK and the United States. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Meanwhile, electronics engineering graduate Huda Ben Ramthan breeds snails in her farm in Tunisia. She is targeting a new demand for the mollusks whose mucus is used in skincare products and meat known for its high nutritious value. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has those details.
When Tunisian entrepreneur Huda Ben Ramthan left her job after a decade, she was going for something much slower.
I studied electrical engineering and I worked at a private communication company for 12 years in administration. Then I decided to open up my own business, but in agriculture instead of administration. I chose snail breeding in 2014, but faced a lot of difficulties. But I tried to overcome them over the years and improve the business. I started with extracting the mucus from the snails, a product that drew a lot of interest from clients. After extracting the mucus, the snails are used for cooking.
The electronics engineering graduate was eyeing the emerging market for mollusks in Tunisia. While many may find breeding snails somewhat icky, Ramthan has no problem touching the little creatures that have become her source of income. Her $10,000 project does not require heavy manpower.
This is a snail's mating room. We choose the ones that are ready for mating and can lay eggs. They stay in here for 3 months, from September to December. We provide them with food and water in a 20°C room. We give them an atmosphere similar to spring, so they can mate, and most of them lay eggs.
While their meat can make for a delicious meal, their mucus can be used to produce beauty products. The mucus is extracted by placing the snail in a bowl of salt and vinegar mixture for 10 minutes before being sold to clients who use it in skincare products.
After studying snail mucus for 4 years due to its richness in hyaluronic acid, collagen, and vitamin E, we have decided to produce a lotion that includes other vegetable oils. We made the lotion and found that it was very effective in moisturizing and brightening the face, as well as fighting wrinkles and dark circles under the eyes. It has been very successful among customers.
Snail meat is said to be nutritious. It is low in cholesterol and rich in proteins, making it a popular delicacy in various cultures. Ben Ramthan says she sources the snails from the Ministry of Agriculture, which supports her and tens of other local producers as part of an initiative aimed at helping local Tunisian producers breed, market, sell, and export snails.
We are a Tunisian restaurant and we want to support Tunisian products. We have introduced snail to our menu and it has been very successful. We introduced it through our bread bowl sandwich, which includes snail and herbal sauce, and customers really love it, and many of them come to order it.
The price of an average snail beauty product ranges between $15 to $25. After selling the mucus extract to clients like Kriya, Ben Ramthan cleans the snail's meat and readies it for cooking. She sells a box of 10 snails for $3.50. While Ben Ramthan only sells her products locally, others export their produce to European markets, mostly Italy. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Well, before we go, let's quickly check in on Africa's currencies today. South Africa's rand firming up today. It was looking to global events for direction in the absence of local catalysts. It did draw some relief from the absence of any immediate escalation in tensions between Iran and the US. Meanwhile, Kenya's shilling weakening today due to increased dollar demand from oil and manufacturing companies. That's amid scant hard currency inflows into the country. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.